Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome back to another video for, well, actually this is really another video for anything. It's kind of breaking new ground on this channel. It's still EVE, but we're not talking about EVE Online, EVE Echoes, or even EVE Vanguard. We're talking about the third one today, Project M5, that elusive little game that's been sitting on the back of my radar for quite some time now, and I know a lot of you folks have been very interested to hear more about it as well. Obviously, this channel started really exploding with EVE Echoes, the mobile experience of EVE Online, and therefore a new EVE mobile game has a lot of you excited. Now, I was lucky enough to be in both of the alpha tests for this. I have some thoughts and opinions. We're going to have a look at the keynote announcement and we're going to add in what I know about the game and how I feel about it going forward. Now, I have spoken to folks at CCP just to make sure that I'm not outstepping my NDA with this. There are some things I'm still not allowed to fully reveal because they haven't been completely revealed, but I can talk openly about my feelings and what I experienced during the test based on what we know here through the keynote as well. Now, before we get started, I just want to make a quick side little announcement because some of you eagle-eyed viewers in like the EVE Vanguard video recently spotted and knew something on my wall. That is Lloyd George artwork of the Stratios. Got it at FanFest. Super happy to have that on the wall. I'm looking forward to adding some more stuff back behind me here so that it's not just my ugly face when you're looking at the camera. But there we go. So let's jump right in on this one. You know the usual thing. Hit like, subscribe, different channels if you want to support financially down below as well, from Patreon, PayPal, and Redbubble merchandise store. And yeah, come join the Catskull Community Discord. Again, I will probably look at opening a, well, not Project M5, but we'll talk about that in a second, channel on Discord as well. So first of all, during the keynote here, they were talking about sort of the past of mobile gaming, and it's worth just having a little bit of a talk about this, because obviously a lot of the folks watching this have followed me from EVE Echoes, and yeah, well, let's just hit play and see what they say.
The EVE universe makes for the perfect platform for other platforms than PC to experience EVE. In 2018, we took some valuable learnings from our first attempt of taking EVE to mobile with EVE War of Ascension.
A game that I haven't actually played and I know very little about, to be fair. I kind of should do some research into that and see what it actually means. I remember people talking about it and being a bit like, oh yeah, that was awful, but a lot of people said that about Echoes from day one and I didn't agree with them, so yeah.
2 years later, we released EVE Echoes in partnership with NetEase, and through the years, more than 13 million players have played EVE Echoes.
That's a big number. 30 million is a very big number. Like, there is no two ways about it. EVE Echoes was a humongous financial success for both CCP and for NetEase. We can talk about where it is now and how we feel about it, but that kind of has to be a nod we have to give the game. 30 million players have played EVE Echoes. That's impressive.
EVE Echoes continues to bring the EVE experience to mobile.
No, it doesn't. It started to bring the EVE experience to mobile. Now it's bringing the NetEase experience to EVE players.
And later this year, they're releasing new area of space with new enemies and new rewards.
This, I don't think, is Cobalt Edge. We talked about this in another video, the Dev Q&A back on Monday. Again, check that out on the channel if you're interested in EVE Echoes. Wow, I really can't talk today. If you're interested in EVE Echoes, check that video out. We talk about the fact that that new area of space probably isn't Cobalt Edge. It's going to be, I imagine, one of the other drone regions that they're going to open up. So they're going to continue doing the sort of drone regions, expanding region by region by region, and bringing that out. Now, they do refer to it as new enemies. I'm not sure how much I believe that, knowing NetEase, but we'll see.
New ships will be introduced, including the Advanced Black Ops Battleship for
Advanced Black Ops Battleships. Yeah, so we're getting the Black Ops Battleships in Echoes. I'm excited that the ships are coming, but we all know how they're going to be added. It's going to be lucky boxes on day one, and then a ridiculous amount of ISK to actually make them legitimately in-game, all designed to get you to swipe.
Or even more sneaky pew-pew.
Even more sneaky pew-pew. Whoever wrote this script. Like, again, a lot of people commented that a lot of the CCP guys here on stage were pretty awkward, few cringe moments and things like that. And I think it's worth pointing out that these guys aren't public speakers by sort of their nature. They're developers. These people are head of, you know, a different department. A lot of the guys on stage are just developers. They're running teams. They're talking to people like that. They're not used to standing up on a stage in front of how many thousand people giving an announcement like this. Also, a lot of them, English is not their first language. So yeah, there were a few cringe moments. There's a lot of power stances and a bit of sort of this kind of looking down and reading from the prompter. But you have to cut themselves some slack for that because they're not public speakers.
So, last year at FanFest, we talked about Project M5.
Here we go, Project M5.
And since then, we've been playtesting, and the playtests are becoming quite competitive. I did extremely well, crossing my coworkers in the very first one, but I'm not going to share how I did in the last one.
Yeah, they got brutal.
And now we can share with you that EVE Galaxy Conquest.
So there's your name, EVE Galaxy Conquest. It's no longer Project M5, it actually has a name. I'm in two minds about this. Galaxy Conquest definitely fits the theme of what's going on here, but Galaxy is not a word we really use that much with EVE. It's more we talk about New Eden as a cluster, not as a galaxy, but that's a minor niggle. It's also a little bit too close to Stellaris Galaxy Command for my liking, but again, that could prove beneficial because you're using words like galaxy, which players outside of EVE are familiar with, and if you're kind of referencing it to the Stellaris game, well, you're fitting within that niche quite nicely. I also just want to say, I absolutely adore this artwork, or aspects of it. I'll be honest, I think this is the first time I've ever seen a Galentian with a beard looking like they've come straight out of, I don't know, some cyberpunk convention in Reykjavik. In fact, I imagine some of that could just literally be any of the guys we saw at FanFest in a hood. The Kaldari one looks typical Kaldari, I really like that. The Amar looks a bit unusual as well, a bit more casual than we normally see Amar players. As for the Minmatar character, makes me a Minmatar fanboy even more, if you know what I'm saying.
A 4X strategy game is coming to a mobile device. It's still spaceships and world domination, but in a bit of a different format. So
4X, see if I can remember this. Expand, explore, exploit, and exterminate. I may have got the first two around. Explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Games like Stellaris or Civilization, those are 4X games, the kind of game where you are building up an empire. You sort of start with a small area and you begin to explore the regions around you. You then expand into those regions, start exploiting the resources in order to expand further, and then go to war with each other to exterminate and end up with a last man standing. If you've played Stellaris or Civilization, you kind of get that 4X feel. It's a little bit different to a real-time strategy, like, say, Command and Conquer or StarCraft. I couldn't think of another RTS for a moment there.
EVE Galaxy Conquest opens the gate to New Eden for even more to embark on their own journey and write their own histories. You start in your own corner of space. From there, you build your station.
I love the fact that they've got those zoom-in graphics to actually showcase it. Very different UI to EVE Echoes. This might be a little bit concerning to some people because it is a very traditional mobile interface that is... 4X mobile games are a notorious breed, right? I was recently approached by a sponsorship team to cover a game called Entropy, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. I said to them, you know, heck, I'll play the game, I'll see what I think about it, and then, yeah, sure, maybe we can talk about the sponsorship after that. It's a fairly lucrative one, and I kind of wish I enjoyed the game more because I could have done with the cash, but I will not sell myself out like that. It was awful, and it was all of these things that you see around here on screen, all of these different sort of currencies and things that you can level up, all your different resources, your shops, your buttons, everything, everywhere, all the time. And this actually isn't as bad as some of the ones I've seen. It's clear, it's clean, it looks fairly EVE. Interestingly, what you're looking at here is these different fleets. And so you build and assign little fleets of ships, and you'll notice it's a Galente base, but he's still using rifters here. We've got, I think those are stealth bombers there. It's kind of hard to see. And we've got other ships sort of here. That's the Navitas fleets. So you can create fleets of different types of, in the tests at least, we may go beyond this, of different frigates. Those can then go out on this hexagon-based grid and start capturing those to expand your influence. You then have all of these different resources across the map as well that you're going to move out to and essentially capture those to start harvesting resources to help expand your base, build more ships, and increase other aspects of that whole 4X experience.
And grow your fleet.
There we are. And interestingly enough, you can now see some Dromiels there, which just look really, really cool in this. And you can see here, there's a combat going on, so obviously someone else has come nearby. You need to start expanding your influence. Here you can see they've now got these asteroids that are being mined, or can be mined and worked on, in order to then expand everything going on here.
You will then eventually run into other players, then you have to decide if you're gonna join force with them, or destroy them.
And that is such an EVE experience, and we saw that big time in the alpha tests. Some players wanted to go it solo. I tried for a little bit to go solo in the very first one, and it went well for the first couple of hours until, yeah, I hit borders with someone else, and suddenly it was, okay, do I fight you or do we join up together? And during the second test, there were a lot of big alliances setting up, people working together, and some absolutely humongous battles. It's a very different approach to both EVE Echoes and EVE Online, in that it is much more a strategic, hands-off game. You are like a commander moving all of your troops around. It's kind of, I imagine, not dissimilar to being an FC and a CEO of an alliance and corporation. It's an interesting experience, and does have some really cool stuff going for it, which we'll talk about in a bit. I mean, just look at that. Just look at that. You can see all of these ships coming in together and just kicking the snot out of that central base. Now, if you followed my channel for a while, you know that I've actually played Infinite Lagrange for a long time. It's another game by NetEase that somehow managed to avoid the worst of NetEase's monetization strategies. And that has this same kind of feel of banding together in order to take on these huge structures and have that sort of alliance feeling where you're working together to achieve a goal far greater than the sum of the parts. So yeah, getting to do this in Galaxy Conquest here does seem pretty cool.
There will be huge battles, and players will have to cooperate, form corporations and alliances in order to succeed. We will launch initially for Android and Apple devices with a PC client planned later down the line.
This is actually a really good thing. So it's coming to iOS and Android first of all. I mean, after all, don't you have phones? Yeah, I went there. But ultimately, yeah, it worked really smooth on mobile devices. The UI's sort of that mid-size. It's not quite as fiddly as Echo's UI was. So if you are sort of a little bit, you know, you struggle to read EVE Echo's screens, Galaxy Conquest you should be a little bit easier with. But one of the things I've really enjoyed again about Infinite Lagrange is being able to play it on PC. And that client is a little bit dodgy. It's not truly supported properly, but it works. And it's just beautiful to be able to see the game on your 4K monitor or whatever. Now, with Galaxy Conquest, that's not going to be there right at the start. That is something they're saying will come later. That means you can theoretically emulate using an Android emulator on PC. How stable that will be, I don't know. A lot of people recommend different emulators. I've ultimately, in the past, doing EVE Echoes, had to use 2 or 3 separate emulators because different ones just have different bugs, and it's kind of pick which bugs you can live with. So I'm actually glad to see that they are going to be doing a PC client later as well, for those who don't really want to burn their phone battery playing a game and would rather just sit at the PC like they do with EVE.
We will be soft launching later this year in selected territories. For more information, please sign up at evegalaxyconquest.com.
Well worth doing. If this sounds interesting to you, head across to evegalaxyconquest.com and pre-register. I know in the UK that was absolutely fine for me. I could pre-register no problem with a UK account. I do know that at least one of the guys in Catskull, who is Canadian, did struggle, but that might change. Do just give it a try, see if it's there. Pre-register, see if you're able to join in on that. And then we come to the 20th Anniversary Collector's Edition. So let's talk about Project M5. I'm going to try and use my keyboard to move back and forth with all of this as well. So again, I love this artwork. I just, on point. Really interesting stuff going on here. It's just key art, though. It's nothing that is at all emblematic of the game. Here you can see Galente player with a Galente base, and they're starting to build and to expand. You'll notice that is slightly different to the stations you see in game. You've got other stuff around it. You can see the dockyards and things that are kind of, you're going to be upgrading those. As you'd expect from a game of this style, yeah, you'll have a limited amount of ships available to you early on, limited number of fleets, but by upgrading your base, you'll be able to expand how many fleets you can have in space. You'll be able to have bigger fleets, higher power ones, new types of ships, that kind of thing. You start small and you start expanding outwards. And you can kind of see that here, where they've started with that sort of inner grid there, and with the hexes, just the lit up green ones on the base. Then you go out and you can see at the bottom left here, this is capturing a new hex. And somewhere on this UI, I don't remember where, it might be this one here, 12 out of 53, is how many hexes you can actually have coloured in, basically. So there comes a point where you look at a new resource and it's like, well, it's going to take me 3 to get there, but I've only got 1 of these left, which means you need to relinquish hold later. You can expand in a big sort of ring, but you end up having to snake and expand as well. And that means that you actually have supply lines created doing this. So like here you can see these guys are capturing this hex, and you could just ring this all out and end up capturing all of this here. But eventually, you're going to start running out of hexes, so you want to get rid of some of the empty ones that aren't getting you any resources. Therefore, you now have sort of a corridor going from your base to this one. And if you need to go further, you're going to have another corridor. Now, if you need to get somewhere that's down here, do you start a new corridor down, or do you expand this one? How do you move your ships around? There is a lot of tactical nature to this game, and that I do really enjoy about it. The onboarding of it as well was surprisingly good for a game that was in alpha. The follow these, follow this, do that style missions, where it's just, build this, harvest that, collect 5 of those, use those to build this and expand. With that expansion, now build this and go out and do that. Really easy onboarding process that was a great beginner experience, made it very easy for people who haven't necessarily played this style of game. Now, I played Stellaris Galaxy Command quite a bit, and I've played Infinite Lagrange a lot, so I kind of got the concept of it, but there was a lot it did differently. This whole having to capture the hexes around you, it's a really interesting mechanic, and I do really enjoy it. And here you can see this big fight going on here with the different stations, and coming in here as well. And fighting this here. You can move your stations, they can be relocated. Here, obviously this isn't where a player started and it's just bam here, but you can see these chains are the pathways, and here someone's obviously got the resources, but they've been cut off by other aggressive players coming in. Maybe that these guys were defending, and these guys have relocated their bases and are now attacking this central citadel. Now, there are some things that do concern me about this, and I think it's worth spending a moment to talk about this, and we can kind of have a look and see this here. Now, when you have a fleet moving around, you'll notice you also have officers. Officers lead your fleets. I don't think you can have a fleet without an officer assigned to it, and officers, at least in the test, came in different quality. Your green, blue, purple, gold, that kind of thing, and they can be upgraded. Now, in the test, the upgrade was fairly standard, and it was done primarily through harvesting resources. That said, this is a mobile game, and therefore there is that whole... I'm trying to think of a good example because I don't really play many of these kind of things. I suppose even Raid Shadow Legends, where you unlock a new hero through collecting cards, and then you have to spend certain resources upgrading that hero, and you can buy packs that will have, this pack will have 5 random heroes in it. One is guaranteed legendary, the others are guaranteed epic, and there's a chance of a legendary and a few commons and uncommons, and you kind of do that RNG buying packs and things like that. Now, I will be completely honest, during the test, as I said, this was all done in-game through resources, but a game like this does need to be monetized. I have no problem with incentivizing purchases, because developers have done a job, this is a business, money needs to change hands. You can't run a game if it's not profitable. The concern is that a lot of these 4X games do go very, very far on that. And so the possibility of buying these boxes that are going to have higher chances of getting better officers or more resources in them and stuff like that begins to creep into pay-to-win territory. And that is something that, ultimately, I'm kind of hoping that because of how EVE Echoes has gone, I'm really hoping that the guys at CCP have looked at Echoes and said, well, this worked really well, that didn't work so well, and that they have learnt the lessons from that. Again, you don't have 20 years of CCP making EVE Online without making a few mistakes, but learning from them. My hope is they have learnt from them. But we will have to see how that one goes ahead, if that, you know, ends up being a... I don't know, it's a pitfall. It's a pitfall that I really hope they do not fall into. This is being developed by CCP Shanghai. It is in-house. It is not a separate team working on it. So that gives me a bit of hope that, yeah, they've looked at other games, learnt the lessons, and they're not just using this as a quick cash money grab. There are some other concerns about the game as well, beyond just the whole sending out, you know, having the different officers and the different tiers of that as well. Most notably is kind of the whale effect. Now, when I used to play Stellaris, this was all permanent and on one seed, which meant that any new players that joined in were joining on day one with people who'd been playing for months and, at this point, years. So you're on the map as a brand new, fresh to the game newbie with a bunch of guys who have spent thousands of dollars on the game and been playing it for months and months at a time. You're going to get absolutely curb-stomped. Infinite Lagrange had an interesting way of dealing with this. The concept of Infinite Lagrange was that you were coming into a system to reconnect it back to the Lagrange network. You've gone off, you know, there was a big war, all these Stargates closed down, you're being sent through into a new system to locate the Stargate, bring peace to that system and reconnect it back to the Empire. This means that there is a finite goal in that system, and once that system Stargate has been found, brought online, and reconnected, that's it. You come home and you start again in a new system. This means everyone starts their new base from scratch. And yes, there are certain things you'll carry across. Any blueprints that you unlocked, any tech points that you got for those ships will be there, so that you do have a slight advantage in the next run, in that you've got more ships than you had on your first run. You've got more versatility, more variety, and some of those ships might have a few more upgrade points along the way, but it does balance out surprisingly well. That sort of goal and reset, goal and reset, goal and reset means that as a new player, when you jump into a server for the very first time, when you jump into Infinite Lagrange for the first time, you come in maybe partway through someone else's server, and if you're unlucky enough to come in right at the end of the server, yeah, it's going to be a bit rough. But it's only a matter of time before the server starts again, and everyone's right back at the start, and suddenly you're on much more equal footing. So I do hope that Galaxy Conquest has some kind of mechanic in it like that as well. I've not seen that yet, but we'll see. We'll see. This is obviously still, at the moment, very early. The game is coming to sort of a pre-release state, so like an open beta, first of all, and then we'll release further down the line. So signing up for the thing here, where was it? There we are. Register today at evegalaxyconquest.com. You might get into the beta and start testing that. Now, the question on everyone's lips is, am I going to be covering this on my channel? To a certain extent, the answer will be a definite yes. It's an EVE product. It will get covered on this channel to some level. And if you folks do end up enjoying that content, if I end up enjoying the game, if those two things happen, we have content, and I will continue to make EVE Online content, and I'll make EVE Galaxy Conquest. Heck, if EVE Echoes turns around and actually fixes their damn game, I'll make more EVE Echoes content. If I enjoy Vanguard, I'll make Vanguard content. This is, you know, it's what I do. I showcase what I'm enjoying. As Otto says, ahoy there, I'm Captain Benzie. I'm having fun, here's how you can too. And on the subject of Otto, it's not quite Otto, admittedly, but have a look at some of the names here. There's an Otro Garushi there on the left-hand side of the screen, and I just love that little reference. Otro Garushi, by the way, obviously is the guy who was originally the CEO of the Ishkone Corporation. Obviously, I think he is dead in the storyline now, but there we go. So yeah, I will be covering Galaxy Conquest as and when we get more information. I'm excited about it. I have my concerns, but it's a mobile game. I think it's healthy to go in with concerns, but with the hope, I think that's the way, with the hope that CCP do it the right way. Anyway, for more about EVE Galaxy Conquest, yeah, like, subscribe, let me know what you think. If you do want to help support the channel, you can head across to my Patreon page, my PayPal tip jar, or my Redbubble merchandise store. come join the Catskull Community Discord. We'll talk about EVE Galaxy Conquest there a bit more as we get close to the time, and if I can showcase more, so much the better. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.